This is Drawing with Delicious Orange. Today I'm going to be drawing Alice from Monster Girl Quest. I'm going to start things off by breaking down all the major steps I go through when drawing an illustration like this. Starting from the roughest gestures and forms, and then going into the details. I keep trying out different things until I find something that I'm happy with. And then once I've done that, I go through and I ink it, paying special attention to the line weight because that's going to tell where things are in relation to each other as well as where you want to put emphasis. Then once I'm ready to get coloring, I always like to start with the most prominent color in the scene. Since Alice likes to show off a lot of her skin, it's going to be her skin tone this time, followed by the color of her outfit, which is kind of a dark gray or black. Then once I've established the color of her hair, you're going to see that after only 3 major parts of the illustration, I've gotten almost all of the color down. Now I'm going to take a step back and actually show you me at work, as I'm in the middle of coloring her outfit. And you'll notice right away that I'm not bothering to stay within the lines. And that's one of the beauties of working digitally, is that you can be as messy as you want to be, and just play around. Make yourself a new layer and just go hog wild. You don't have to worry about anything, because you can always just come back and erase the parts that go outside the lines. You can even separate the costume into multiple parts like I do here, so that later on, when I want to adjust one section, I can do that very easily just by going to the right layer, locking the transparency, and then working with that layer in particular. Right now, I'm just majorly trying to pay attention to the basic forms of the character. Trying to get the sense of what just the general lighting in the scene is, and get the contours and shapes of the character to really get a sense of depth. Now for the trim, I show you a different technique. Rather than being messy and going outside the lines, I block in each part of the trim. Later on, once I'm ready to actually shade and color the trim, I'm just going to lock the transparency, and then I won't have to worry about going outside the lines at all, because I'll already have established where that trim is going to be. Right now, I notice that there's a part of the clothing that I don't really like. So I go back and I add in more shadows, adding a second layer that's going to be on a multiply setting to add deeper, darker shadows. But since it's kind of hard to tell where those are sometimes, you'll notice I also use a color overlay to temporarily change the color of the shadows from the dark purple I'm using to shade to a nice bright red that's easy to see. Then, now that I've finished that part, I go back to the trim and I finish that up. Then I come in and I play around a little bit with the shading on her tattoos, trying to find a good kind of middle ground where I can play around with the blending modes until I find something I like. And then I go back and I come in and finish up the hair, blocking it in just like I did with the trim before, so that I don't have to worry about it when I go back to color and shade in all the little details of her hair. This is also the only part of the illustration where I use a special brush. I actually made a speckled, kind of streaky brush that works really well for establishing a texture in the hair. But for everything else in the illustration, I'm just using solid round brushes, and sometimes a soft round brush to help feather things out. But there's nothing special about any of the other brushes. Then, once again, I go right back in and start messily coloring in all the flowers I see. You can switch back and forth between different techniques like this all you want. Don't feel like you have to do everything one way in an illustration. Just do whatever feels right at the time. And then I go in and start working on some of the details, like her eyebrows, and also establishing all of the golds, such as her eyes and the golden trim on the bottom of her outfit. In working on her eyes, I noticed I made a mistake earlier, so I just go back and quickly correct that by adding a new layer in the line art section and correcting the iris shape. Then I make a new layer on top of the line art and start establishing where I want specular highlights. Since the eyes are one of the shiniest parts of the body, you're going to oftentimes have specular highlights here, but not always. Keep in mind what might work well for this illustration might not work well for yours, so just do whatever you feel looks good. Then I go in and I actually fill in her sclera, or the whites of her eyes, but I don't actually use white. I use a pale blue and kind of a purple color that mimics her skin tone. Because the whites of your eyes are going to be just as shiny as the rest of your eyes, they're going to also reflect all those colors around them. And since Alice has this bluish purple skin, I used those colors to help shade her eye in. When working with the symbol on her hair, I block in where the symbol is and then set the layer to multiply, which allows me to get the texture from the hair to pop through, and then I can work with the color of the symbol itself without worrying about it, and while still retaining the texture of the hair underneath. And you'll see right here, I'm going back through and I'm coloring the line art. This is a technique called flavoring the line art, which is basically just going through and adding a little bit of the color from the picture itself and having that tint the line art slightly. It's going to help the line art merge much more seamlessly with the rest of the color, so that it feels like it's a part of the illustration, not necessarily something that's tacked on top of it. And even now, I notice that I totally forgot about her tail all this time, so I go back in and I fix that. Finally, finishing up, I notice that there's a little bit of extra specular highlight that I want to add to her clothes to help it get that kind of shiny, silky look. Finally, I add a new layer and I add some extra little reds and yellows to help warm up some sections of the illustration, particularly on the cool blues and purples of her skin tones, to give a subtle extra bit of color to the piece, as well as some atmospheric perspective to help create better depth. If you like this and want to see more, be sure to hit the like button below. And if you liked the music, there's a link in the description to DJ Delito. Good luck trying to type in that if you have autocorrect turned on.